It is 4:59. Oh, now it's 5 o'clock. So I guess we can just jump right into things here. Tonight we are doing a home buyer seminar. My name is Dave Pilon. I'm with the Miale team at Keller Williams. And we are on Zoom. I believe we are also broadcasting on Facebook Live, and it's really, really exciting. Let me see how to get the slides working here. All right, cool. So if I do that. All right, excellent. Cool. So thank you, everybody, for coming tonight. We have a couple of other people here as panelists in this home buyer seminar. We have Brian Keating from the Keating Agency Insurance. We have Jason Kilduff from Ward Kilduff Mortgage. We have it's Rich Witt, right?
Yeah, you got it.
Yep. I just keep saying Attorney Witt. So I was like,
Oh, call me Rich, please, Dave.
okay. And each of these people are going to talk a little bit tonight about their role in the process of buying a home. And hopefully we're going to learn a lot of good stuff. People are going to ask some questions. And, you know, I'm really looking forward to it. So here's a little brief agenda for tonight. We're going to talk about, there's a 6-step process. We're going to talk about obtaining a mortgage. We're going to talk about what the role of the attorney is, and protecting your investment will be handled by Ryan Keating. And there we go. Cool. So what is cool about the Miale team? I am on the Miale team. I chose to work on this real estate team because it is the #1 real estate team, I believe, in the Connecticut MLS. And here's a good example, all right? Last week I was talking to someone who had bought, or who, like a family member had bought a home with the Miale team. They had not done it. And they said, oh, that's great. You work for the Miale team, right? That's that team that doesn't just try to sell you things. They actually teach you like a lot about the home buying process and things you should be aware of and whatever. And, you know, I sometimes take for granted that that is my approach to real estate in general. But that's definitely part of our culture here at the Miale team. That is how we empower people, which is one of our missions here at the team. We're going to give you the information that is going to help you make decisions for yourself, whether you're a home buyer, home seller, or you're one of our partners who help us get these deals done. And yeah, so that's great. And look at that, we have such great photography now too. All right, so that's me. I've been in the business 8 years. I've helped hundreds of people buy homes. And I've learned a couple of things along the way. And I love telling people about it and teaching them what to expect in this process. Jason Kilduff, he is like the best loan officer around. I actually just closed a deal with him a couple days ago. It was very smooth, and the clients are already telling their friends about us, so we must have done a good job. Richard Witt, one of the best real estate attorneys around. His office is right around the corner from ours. West Hartford Center here. We have a little thing going, I guess, because we also have Ryan Keating. And if you hear the word insurance, a lot of people are going to know Keating because they are at like every single event locally that I've been to lately. So we have a great team of professionals here, and look forward to hearing what everybody has to say. There you go. Look at that. Look at all this great stuff. You can learn about me and things I do in the community and how I really have a very authentic approach. I don't really have a professional voice and a and like a voice I use with my friends. That's why, I don't have a different voice for talking on the phone than I do when I'm just hanging out with friends or family or anything like that. So I think that's why we're saying I have an authentic style. I have a master's degree in recreation management, which maybe nobody would care about in the real estate industry. But you just know that I used to do cool things in the woods with ropes courses and hiking and all that. That's fun, right? And I'm still involved with the camping industry, and I network within West Hartford Chamber of Commerce, the future leaders of West Hartford, which Ryan is a founding member of. So we definitely have a lot of stuff in common going on here tonight, which is cool. Your path to home ownership. These slides are beautiful. So basically what we're trying to say here is when you're ready to start this journey, this group of people that we have right here is ready to help you out. All right. So a couple of things to think about here. Where do you start if you are going to buy a home? A lot of people start by just kind of like Googling real estate, and they don't know what to do. So a good place to start would be by calling Dave Pilon, associate partner at the Miale team at Keller Williams. But maybe you didn't do that yet. So you're somewhere in this process and you're a little confused, and you can fit yourself into exactly where you fall, and we'll pick it up from there and we'll just keep going. But if you have not started this process at all, then you would start by contacting me and choosing me as your real estate agent. And we would go over in probably a little more depth what we're gonna do right now. So the way we approach this on the Miale team is that we have a number of things that we try to alleviate a little bit of stress and the mystery surrounding buying a home, because a lot of people, even though there's just tons and tons of information out there on the internet these days, they still don't really know what the first step would be if you're going to buy a home. For example, if this was back in the early 90s, if you wanted any information about when, like, properties that are available for sale, recent sales, that sort of data, you'd probably have to go to a real estate office and talk to a real estate agent who was guarding this information heavily. They're kind of like the gatekeepers of the whole industry. Or maybe you would see something published in like the newspaper on a Sunday. Now you go to any one of hundreds of websites, and all of the listings are there, and all of the recent sales can be found by anyone in the general public. So the role of the real estate agent really is not really the keeper of this data by any means. It's all out there. You can even gauge how much like a property ought to be worth usually by looking at the information that's on the internet. Of course, when you meet with your real estate agent, you may have a little more confidence by hearing them talk about the comparable prices in the area and neighborhoods, towns you're interested in. But you have a pretty good idea of what's available potentially in the price range that you think that you might be qualified to buy in before you even get started. But what we've noticed is that, like, there's actually so much information out there that people maybe sometimes even need a little bit more help than usual. And so that's why they start with the good place to start is to start with a free consultation with a real estate agent, which is a good segue into the next part, which is that to use a real estate agent, or we don't like that word use, but to hire a real estate agent, a buyer's agent, it doesn't cost you anything as a buyer. you can use all of the expertise and service of a person like myself, and it is completely free for you. And you should hire somebody to be in your corner, because your only other option will be to work directly with the agent that's representing the seller, and their duty is to the seller. So I'm kind of thinking like, all right, cool. So we have 9 participants in here. So one thing that you could do, if you are watching on Zoom at any point in this process, I think you can ask questions, and then we'll just come back to them when we get closer to the end or something like that, or closer to the end of like each segment of this thing. So if anybody has any questions as we go, just let me know. But basically, what we're saying is, work with a real estate agent. It's free, and not all real estate agents are created equally. We think, you know, you want to work with a full service real estate agent that is going to sit down, have a conversation with you, either in person, possibly on Zoom too, you know, for social distancing reasons and stuff, and figure out your wants and needs, come up with a plan, and, you know, get started. So that's going to be the first thing. And part of that process is going to be getting a pre-approval from a loan officer, such as one from Ward Kilduff Mortgage, Jason Kilduff himself. So so one of the things about that would be that you don't have to be the expert of of financing a home. We lean on the other professionals that we work with pretty heavily. And to figure out how the financing is going to work, I just trust completely what my lender partners, you know, the way you know, whatever they say, I just kind of go with it. And so I like to work with lenders who, you know, have the same sort of approach, consulting with the buyers as I do myself. But then I also like to have one. So there's like 2 things to think about here. Like, one, you go to a bank, you get a letter, it says you're approved for however much you're approved for, and they say, go ahead, go out on your way, you're all set. Or you can work with Jason Kilduff, and he will be a part of our team the whole entire time. And when it's time to make an offer on a property, he'll say that he'll write us a letter and send it to us that says, you are approved specifically for 123 Main Street, which is going to be a lot stronger than just you're generally approved for, you know, whatever you might be approved for. So you're going to get approved, and based on your own situation, there'll be a specific loan program that's probably ideal for you. And also, the other side of that is that the property also has to qualify for the mortgage. So the mortgage company makes sure that you're qualified, but then it's also, we kind of have to be aware that you need to be buying a house, with a couple of exceptions, but for the most part, that does not need a lot of repairs to be made. Jason, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'll jump in for a minute. I get asked the question all the time. We're not really, you know, sure when we're going to buy. What's a good time to get started? You really want to get started as early as possible, because it's always good to be prepared, right? We want to talk about A, what the bank would approve you up to as a maximum, and then B, about your budget, right? So we'll see what the maximum amount is you can qualify for, and then we'll start talking about you specifically and where you're comfortable, right? Because we don't want you to take on more than you can handle, and we want you to be comfortable with your mortgage payment. But that'll give us a good idea as far as price point and things like that. It may give us an opportunity to review your credit and potentially make some suggestions as far as ways to either improve the score or to help manage, you know, taking on new debt like a mortgage. So a lot of things we can do. The earlier in the process we do it, the better off we are. We're local. We've been open and doing mortgages, you know, inside of Connecticut for the last 16 years. We've worked with a majority of the agents in the area. So usually what will happen is when we finally get you pre-qualified and you find a house you're going to make an offer on, we'll actually call the listing agent and say, our client's going to be writing an offer. They're very well qualified, and we can move quickly and close you quickly. It goes a long way, especially in a competitive market like we're in. So again, it's that personalized service. It's that touch in the community that really helps you along the way and helps you secure a house, especially in a market where there could be multiple offers, and your offer could only be maybe one of the few that they're looking at.
Cool. Yes. All right. So yeah, that's a good point, is that like right now it's actually a fairly complicated market to buy a home in. It's great because the interest rates are low, but it's complicated because the inventory is super, super low. So you're probably going to have to make offers on a number of properties before you get one under contract. So I'll come back to that in a second. But basically, so where you're at right now. So you hire a real estate agent to help you out. And once we get figured out like what you are pre-approved for and what you're looking for, where you're going to start getting auto updates, and the conversation between real estate agent and the buyer is going, like, when do we want to go see properties? I usually tell people I'm available, by appointment, but generally speaking, I'm willing to work most weekdays until like 8 p.m. So it's just the nature of how this job works. So I always plan on like having that time available, because that's when people like to go see properties, in the evening a lot of the time. And then on weekends, right? And, one time somebody was really concerned that like, are you going to be available like all the time? So if that's a concern, the great thing about being a part of the Miale team is that we will all help each other out. And, if for some reason I'm not available, like I would say I'm available a good amount of the time, but occasionally I do have other activities I like to get involved in, and I might, have a conflict. Somebody else from the team is going to be able to help you out also. But so we work together like that. It's really kind of good to be a part of something like that. So you see some houses, you find one that you're really interested in buying. We have your pre-approval, we're ready to go. We want to write an offer. Now, if this was 5 years ago, if you wanted to buy a home and you were qualified to buy a home, you could just go pick one out. Like that was pretty much what was going on. And so that was, that was a buyer's market. You could generally make offers a little bit less than the list price, and then negotiate a little bit perhaps, but you'd still kind of probably come in under the list price. Now you're competing with sometimes as many as 10 offers on some listings. So, there's a number of ways that, when we get into the process, that we make your offer look most competitive. But, working with a good team is a very big part of it. So we want to make sure that's the big difference. So you're probably going to have to go through the process of, except for some very rare circumstances, you're probably going to have to go through the process of writing an offer and, looking at homes a number of times in order to be successful. So that's what's going on right now. It's been very interesting. And this actually had kind of started before COVID, but now it's like on steroids. So every buyer I'm working with, I mean, I just had one this morning. I was sure we were going to get it. It was like 15,000 over asking, a giant down payment, and somebody beat them. It's just what's going on. But so that's just how it's going. We don't know what it's going to be like, a couple months from now. I don't know what it's going to be like a year from now, but right now, because of low interest rates and low inventory, and potentially a little bit of urban migration that's going on, it is very competitive. But eventually you'll get to a point where you do get an accepted offer, and part of that will be making a small deposit. Around here, it's anywhere from like maybe $1,000 to $5,000. Rare occasions, a little bit more than that. So you make a deposit, and then we get into the next part, all right? So if you review a little bit, you don't really have to worry about the whole entire transaction and figuring out how it all works, because that is your real estate agent's job. you don't really have to worry about financing and how specifically that all works, because you have your loan officer by your side for this. And then you also, when we're going out and we're looking at properties, we're not bringing a plumber. We're not bringing an electrician. We don't bring a general contractor, and we are not experts of property condition. And we're never really expected to be them. So and when people go and they look at properties with me, they may say, they'll go like, what does this furnace look like? And I just know, like, you know, it's either clean or it's dirty, but like, that's about it, right? I'm not an HVAC contractor. I'm not an electrician. We don't have to be any of those things. And that is why roughly 10 to 14 days, whatever we write into the contract after property goes under contract, there will be a period where you can do a home inspection. So the home inspector, we do not actually have a home inspector on this panel, but that's okay. We have many good recommendations for home inspectors. And the home inspector will give a good list of things that, well, it serves kind of like two purposes, really. One would be you're going to learn about the systems in the home. You're going to learn about things that, like, how does the heating and cooling system work? You're going to be living there, so you're going to want to know how that works. How much more time can you expect certain things to last? And, you know, there's all kinds of things that you maybe have never considered about if you haven't bought a home before, that you learn about through the home inspection process. Now, a home inspection can be a little bit scary for the buyers, because it's going to look like there's so many things wrong with the home. A home inspector is going to find a list of lots and lots of things that ought to be addressed on any home, including new construction. So the thing to keep in mind is that's just part of home ownership. There's always going to be another project. So the sellers are typically not going to do all of the things that come up in a home inspection, but you may have the opportunity to negotiate a couple things here and there. But be prepared to see a long list of potential issues that could happen with the property. But some of them are just things that you are going to need to do while you live there, right? Like, if you're going to live in a house for 20 years, at some point, you're going to be doing a roof. You might be doing windows. You might be doing siding. So you might see some of this stuff come up on a home inspection report, like, you know, this is past its useful life or something. Sometimes that doesn't even mean it needs to be done immediately. It could be done in the next 2 years. But it's going to be on there as a potential issue. So that's home inspection. So if you get past the home inspection, assuming you still want the house, that's when you're going to go ahead and you're going to apply for your mortgage. You might be wondering, like, I got this pre-approval, so what exactly happens at this point? You know, they're basically going to just ask for more documents. You know, the mortgage company is trying to put together a packet of information about you that says how likely you are going to be to pay your mortgage. So, and part of that, they will send an appraiser out to look at the property. So if there is any question about the condition of the property after the home inspection, whether it would, you know, qualify for that mortgage, or the price, then, you know, we're going to figure that out during the appraisal. So that's why it's good to have an appraiser. So, I mean, in many senses, we do say that if you're buying a property with a mortgage, you are not going to be overpaying, because the bank does not want you to be overpaying with their money. So that's kind of how that works. You have anything to add to that, Jason?
Yeah, so I mean, we're going to go through, obviously we're going to underwrite your ability to repay the mortgage. We're going to make sure that the collateral is sufficient by means of an appraisal. And, you know, in certain other instances, if you're buying a condominium, we're actually going to take a look at the condominium project, right? We're going to make sure it's sound and stable, that they're budgeting okay for expenses and things that may be needed for improvements over the course of the next few years. So there's a lot that kind of goes into the underwriting process. And a lot of times people will say, well, I just need to get a mortgage. It's a process, right? We're going to take you through it nice and smooth, and get you to closing on time. and it's going to be some paperwork, and it's going to be a process, and not just obtaining a mortgage, but we're great at doing it. We're going to do it fast and easy and get you into that house as quick as possible.
So, one thing that comes up at this point, sometimes people want to know is like, what's the difference between the home inspection and the appraisal? Because they know there's some aspect of the appraisal that like has to do with the condition of the property, and they know they can't get the good mortgage they want if there's something wrong with the house. So here's the big thing. The home inspection is really between the buyer and and the seller. The mortgage company doesn't come in there, but at the same time, we are kind of looking for things that might be a problem for certain loan programs. But that's not part of the appraisal. The appraiser, when they come in, they do something a little more general. There's certain things they're looking for, but they are not going into nearly as much depth as the home inspector will go. So that they're kind of unrelated and related all at the same time. All right. So then after you are getting your appraisal and you've applied for your loan, you're well on your way. You might want to look into things such as homeowners insurance. And that is where the Keating agency and Ryan Keating may come into play here. So if somebody contacts the Keating agency for getting some insurance on a home they're buying, how would that process look?
So when people reach out to us, or we're working with the realtor lender, generally get the address, the house you're looking at. If it is in the stage where you have a tentative closing date, we'll work backwards from that. So that's usually one of the first things you want to know. Is it a house you're just looking at and you want to know the pricing for insurance, or are you committing to it? You have a closing date in mind, and then we'll want to have all the information of who's your lender and who's a closing attorney, because we're going to need to get a binder together, as well as what type of purchase it is. Is it a new home for you, first-time home buyer? Are you someone that is relocating to Connecticut? So it's usually situational, and we want to make sure that it's the best experience for that type of purchase, because someone that is moving here, they might not even have seen the house. We've seen more of that lately too, of people moving from out of state, working with a realtor. They trust the realtor. This is what I'm looking for. To some people, a house is a house. To some people, that first house, they need a little bit of education on what insurance is, as well as coming into play when you are financing your first mortgage. Sometimes those insurance numbers need to fit that as well. So pretty much it would be taking the situation and helping work you through the process of getting you to that binder so you can close.
Cool. What are like the most interesting things that happen with homeowners? Like what's something that like you think would be covered, that people often think would be covered, but is actually extra?
So some of the things, mold and fungi, water backup. There's some carriers have coverages for them. So working with a variety of different carriers, there is a reason some of the pricing is the flatline pricing for Quincy Mutual might be $1,000, but you add on their superior home endorsement for $250, you're getting $5,000, $10,000, $50,000 of these coverages that if you add them on separately with other companies, you'd be looking at $1,500. We've had a couple issues with mold through this summer being very dry and then rain happening, or people that have not been home, more so with some of our business clients that work out of some home type offices. Our neighbor next door actually had a furnace. They shut down the AC, and water, when they stopped, it kind of leaked out, and he came back into the office after a month or so and had mold everywhere. Those are little things, but the biggest thing too when you're buying a home and looking at houses is knob and tube wiring. So updates, how new is the roof? The newer the roof, generally insurance carriers use a 30-year window on roofs, so that 1 to 5 year roof has a greater discount versus the 6 to 10, 11 to 20, 20 to 30. So an older roof, you will have a bit higher premium. If you've recently got your roof renovated, it's good to update that. That should lead to a little bit of a reduction on premium. But knob and tube's a big one because many carriers stay away from writing that. Generally leads to more fires. And a lot of homes in the West Hartford, Greater Hartford area have dead knob and tube. It's in the house. It's been disconnected, but someone might have lived there for 30, 40 years and it wasn't an issue in the past. And now that the house is being sold, the inspection report comes back and mentions knob and tube. And you just need a letter from the electrician to say it's disconnected and it'll be removed completely. And usually there's not a problem.
Yeah, that's a good point because actually in, Connecticut, New England in general, we are often dealing with old homes, 100 years, 70, 80 years old, and they have systems that are outdated and insurance companies will view them as things that will potentially burn your house down or flood them. And so they don't want to pay for that. So
yeah, I'd say with that, the secondary heat, a handful of wood stoves, people that we don't see it too much, but I'm sure you see it more than we do, or I do, of houses that do have that little coal wood burning stove in the center of the house. Some people like that. Insurance companies don't.
So if there was any concern about buying, I guess what you call like a lemon, right? A house that's going to have a lot of problems. And then you found out that you really can't get a mortgage on that. Let's take it a step further. And if you're still able to get a mortgage on some types of houses, you're probably going to have trouble insuring them. So there's a lot of reasons why you're not going to end up with a house that is that doesn't. In order to get your mortgage, you also have to get homeowners insurance. So there's all these reasons why you're not going to end up with a house that's going to cause you a lot of trouble. There's always exceptions to that rule, I'm sure. There's never a way to be 100% sure about anything, but we got all these people looking out to make sure you're going to get a decent home. So let's move down the line here in this home buying process here. So we're getting down there. You've applied for your mortgage and you're getting closer to getting mortgage commitment and you're applying for your homeowner's insurance and all that. At that point, the next person that really comes into play here is going to be the closing attorney. In Connecticut, I always say there's a lot of roles for attorneys to have here in Connecticut and a couple other surrounding states. So it's probably a great place to be a lawyer. And so, but they pretty much run the show. The closing attorney is going to do a number of things, most of which you'll remember is they're going to run your closing. So once you have full mortgage commitment, in a clear to close, they're going to put together a package that has all the information about your mortgage and your insurance and all that. And when you get to the closing, that's something that the attorney is going to explain to you. So leading up to that, though, there's a couple of things that get done. And I don't know if Rich would like to speak to what happens during that period of a couple weeks right before somebody closes once we have a pretty clear commitment that things are going to work out.
Well, Dave, what we do is, most of the Miale team can vouch for this and Jason as well. Once we get a contract, I do an email blast to everybody who's participating, the agent, clients, Jason, everybody involved gets on that email and they get introduced to our staff, our direct lines, and then my cell phone, which just like you guys I don't think we advertise enough that we do answer our phones 7 days a week. We just think it's normal. We think it's second nature, but it's not the case out there for everybody. So we do an intro email from the very, very beginning. So basically we're there from the beginning moving forward. If there's any questions, we can help, before the title search comes back. And the main thing we do is review the contract, look at the closing cost credits, note all the contingency dates. And then we order the title search. We send out a retainer. We try to get a heads up on what the client, is concerned about. If it's a sale, we want to know what mortgages there are. I'll give you an example. I just had one. We got the file 2 months ago. These, unfortunately, the buyer's attorney held the title search, and my clients didn't know it because these are historic mortgages that they had paid off, but there was 4 unreleased mortgages that we just found out about a week and a half before the closing. So you have a title search that was done a month ago, but we didn't get it until about a week and a half ago. So there's a lot of unknowns. There could be a boundary dispute, easements, fences that go into right-of-ways. There's, you name it, you can think of it. And we try to get a heads up on that. So we order the title search, unlike most attorneys that wait for commitment, which sometimes comes towards the end of the process. We order the title search right up front after they sign a retainer. Usually within 72 hours of us getting the contract, that title search is ordered. It's a little bit more financial risk on our part if the deal dies, but I know weeks, probably I get a 2-week to 3-week head start on what's against this property, and it gives the seller's attorney a heads up a lot earlier to work on problems and make sure it goes to a smooth closing and there's no disappointments.
Cool. So actually, I think the most interesting thing you just mentioned there is the unreleased mortgages. Like,
Yeah.
what exactly does that mean?
That means that, people pay off their mortgages, and up until, maybe Jason can back me up, a lot of the national lenders up until about 8 years ago were mailing these with a check to have the homeowner record them themselves. And what did they do? They just put it in the first drawer they got and left it there. And so it never got recorded. And this couple had 4 of those, but they were missing 3 out of the 4. And they only had 1, and it actually had its original check from the 80s, which they had just put in their box. It was probably somewhere in storage, but they just couldn't find it through all their boxes of paperwork. So instead of mailing it, now generally they mail things directly to the town halls, and the seller's attorney use release tracking companies to make sure that these releases do go on. But the company's doing a great job now of mailing them directly to town hall. I think they've learned that it doesn't do much good mailing it to a homeowner who just puts it in their drawer. And then there's stuff like solar panels, Dave, we're dealing with, which is becoming every week a bigger and bigger issue because there is a notice which is called the UCC1, which is, can't call it a lien, but it's a notice of a lien, notice of personal property not belonging to the homeowner. And those have to be removed before Jason can put his new mortgage on. So that's all coordination. And the more weeks we have in advance to work on these things, the better. As a seller's attorney as well, the thing I hate the worst is getting, we just had one today where they just got the title search and they're closing this Friday. They got it today, and they found out that we represented the buyers. And luckily we had an owner's policy. There was an unreleased mortgage from two previous owners. Didn't appear on our search back in 2009, but because we have an owner's policy from 2009, they're going to be able to close on Friday. But that was with 3 days notice. So we were able to call our title company. They had it, they issued it, and we're all set. But again, the more time we have to work on things, I'm sure Ryan can say the same thing. You don't call the day before or the day of the closing for your insurance. All of us need time. A lot of people are working remotely. And again, the teamwork is essential here, because I've had my realtors assist me, my loan officers assist me. The realtors assisting me in getting things done. It's just, especially with COVID, teamwork is more useful than I've ever seen in my entire career, to be honest with you.
And of course, with the Miale team too, you're going to be working with like multiple transaction coordinators to make sure all dates are met too, which is really cool.
Yeah, the transaction coordinators at your team are just, I was just talking to Nick about this last Friday at the event. You guys are just amazing, on top of the contingencies, wanting to know when we're closed. Do we have commitment? 24 hours later, checking in again. Do we have commitment? Do we have a clear to close? Do we have a scheduled date? it's many backstops to prevent things from slipping through the cracks, which is pretty amazing, and it's helpful to me as well.
We're about as close to perfect as you could be, right? Nothing really is, but yeah, but still kind of far away. So yeah, no, that's the thing. So a title search is basically, you know, that's going to be what the attorney is doing leading up to closing. One of the big things, and make sure that you are not taking on a property where somebody's going to come after you for some money for something that happened 25 years before you.
Absolutely.
It's a highly unlikely scenario, but you really don't want it to happen. So we make sure that that's not going to happen.
Yeah, we don't close unless you get clean title, and I'm talking clean title. That means that you can sell the home a week later. They could say, Dave, we're not happy with the house, we're relisting it, and you could literally sell it with no issues whatsoever. We get letters on every one of these approvals from the title company, which we put in our file. Any letters of exemption or indemnification, we save them. Believe me, keep them in the permanent file.
Yeah, I always think, like, I don't know how this works in states that don't have attorneys right there at the closing table, but I think it's a really good thing that we have a person who has a law degree and is actually a lawyer right there at the closing with us. They in other states, I don't think it's like that everywhere. So that always gives everybody a little more reassurance that everything is going to be okay. So at this point, what will happen is you have your insurance binder ready. That's what we call that, right, Ryan? You get the binder is all set to go.
Yeah, the binder shows proof of coverage that you've paid for your insurance, or you know, a lot of times the closing attorney will pay for it. Which actually, Richard, you want to talk on that? Why sometimes the attorney? I notice more often it's the attorney that pays it in the closing costs.
Yeah, what happens is sometimes people in, you know, the mobile world we're working in, people are sometimes not giving. They're giving Ryan enough time to issue the policy, but they're either not able to get payment to them. So we'll, as an added service, naturally with Jason approving it, we're allowed to collect it at the closing. We take responsibility to mail out that check the day of the closing. So Ryan gets paid immediately, but Ryan's willing to bind coverage based on our word and showing that it's on the closing statement. So we're basically guaranteeing payment, and we get that out immediately.
Cool. Yeah. So you get the binder. Then at some point we're going to hear that we got clean title. You'll get your mortgage commitment. And then, like, the last step is you'll get a clear to close, right? So that usually happens maybe, you know, 24 to 48 hours before you actually can close. Because then, of course, we have to work with everybody's schedules too.
Right.
Which is, like, when I think about what goes into that, it's amazing that anybody ever gets anything done, coordinating all these different schedules, right?
That's correct.
So once you get that clear to close, you are entitled to a final walkthrough. So you go to the house that you're buying, and the sellers have already moved out. You walk through the property, and you can do whatever you want at that point. I mean, don't burn the house down, but you can flush the toilets. You can open and close the windows. You can, you know, turn things on, turn them off, and make sure it is in the state that you want it in before, when you're taking the property. And I always like to, you know, I like to do the final walkthrough basically on the way to the closing, so that, you know that an hour later when you own that property, that's exactly what it's going to look like. So you do your final walkthrough, then you go to your attorney's office. Often closings take place at attorney's offices, but lately they've been taking place on picnic benches.
That's correct.
You know, perhaps on the back of a pickup truck.
I'm looking at the benches right now on my porch in my office.
Yeah.
So, benches on our porches with four chairs each, and we did a closing this afternoon on one of the tables. So
that sounds very quaint, very enjoyable experience. But yeah, they can take place anywhere where you can set up a meeting. We do them sometimes at our office. Sometimes we do them at we do them at lenders' offices. I'm sure Jason has done that before too. We could even do it at Ryan's office.
We have plenty of space.
Yep. Wherever there's a conference room or a place to sit down and sign some papers, because that's basically what you're going to be doing at your closing. So, a big part of that would be, an attorney such as Rich Witt would be going over what are all these documents, what do they mean? They'll go over all the documents related to your mortgage and your insurance and transferring ownership from one person to another. And by the end of that whole entire process, we just give you the keys and it's yours, So another thing happens, probably later in the day where the attorney goes to the town hall and records that the property has been sold to a different person, but it's yours as soon as you walk out of that closing room. So that is pretty much the whole process of buying a home at this point. So let's, unless you guys have anything you would want to add here at this point?
I think the only thing I'd say is because of COVID, we've done hundreds of closings through Zoom in our parking lot where they just pick up the documents sealed in an envelope through a mail slot. We sign on the Zoom just like we're doing here today. We go through it page by page. Usually takes about 45 minutes to an hour. Answer any questions throughout the whole process, and then they drop the docs back. I do a bank review, and then I go out at a safe distance and take their oath. So I want to let people know that that is available for their safety, and so they don't have to worry during this COVID period.
That's really cool. I mean, I don't know if I've heard of that exact process, but I like it. We don't have to do much of anything face to face if we don't want to. So, a thing about the closing is that people often think it's like, the culmination of all this. It's like, it can often be sort of anticlimactic where they're just like, oh, is that it? That's all it's going to be? You just get your keys and you're done?
Right.
And that's actually what we're aiming for. All right. If there's an issue where we have to stay in that room and talk for long, we don't want any of that. So most of the closing actually starts on the day that we get the property under contract. So that whole process of getting all the paperwork together and the home inspection and the insurance and all of that, it's just like, if we do that properly, which I think we pretty much do, when you get to the closing, you're just like, wow, that's like no big deal. It's just, you just sign some papers and then you're done, right? And that's that. I mean, of course, then once you do that, then you become a part of the Miale team family for life. And you will never forget that we exist because you'll be invited to drive-in movies and, parties, baseball games, hockey games. We're just going to be there for you forever. I mean, that's part of the deal here. So your closing is the beginning of your new life with the Miale team family. And that is probably my favorite part about the closing too. That's just like another little visual here about the home inspection process, becoming a homeowner. Let's see what else we got. Oh, look, there's a little bio about Jason Kilduff. We got a bio about Rich Witt. And of course, anybody who's viewing this, I'm sure we can get you these slides if you want to learn more about us on your own.
They want you. They don't want the slides.
That's fine. Yeah. I'd love to talk to anybody about buying a home. I like everybody's talking about like, what are you going to talk about on this? I was like, I could talk about this stuff for hours. Like it's not a problem. Oh, look at that. Ryan Keating. There he is right there. Okay, cool. So, I mean, I guess we could kind of open up for some questions, which I'll have to figure out exactly how that works at this point. I don't know if you can do. If anybody has any questions, they could let us know. I think we have like a Facebook Live thing going on also. But let's take a look at these frequently asked questions until somebody does ask a question. All right. Oh, okay. Lauren is going to send us the questions. But let's take a look at our frequently asked questions. And
I just tuned into the Facebook Live. It's a little it's a little freaky because there's a lag. So I'm gonna.
yeah, I know. I've done that before too. Let me get back to my full screen, however that works. Can people still see my screen? I guess it doesn't really matter.
All right. So you got a question about how does it get the pre-approval? If you saw that pop
Yes.
up, Jason.
We have Devin asking, how does it work getting pre-approved? Does my credit get pulled? Good question. Do you have an answer for that, Jason?
I sure do. There's a lot of people out there, right, that are going to issue these letters without taking a look at your credit. It's really not the right thing to do. We need to look at credit. We need to, in some instances, talk more in depth about your income, okay? Because the pre-approval is going to be based on what you're comfortable paying and what the bank will approve you for. So we need to know how much you make, right, in order to figure out how much you can afford. And then we also need to look at your credit to figure out how much you're already paying, right? So how much in total is going out to your debt between all things listed on your credit report and the proposed new mortgage payment, that versus what you're earning, right? To determine eligibility and affordability, right? It's doing yourself a disservice to try to get pre-qualified. And there's some online lenders that'll give anyone a letter, right? And it's hard when you get out there and you find a house that you love and then you finally go to submit your application and someone says, you're not gonna be able to get this mortgage, you can't qualify for it. So a huge difference out there between being thorough and not being thorough. So it's really important that you vet the person, whoever it may be, whether it's me or someone else, as far as what they're gonna do in order to pre-qualify you. They really need to look at your income and your credit and make sure that we're setting you up for success here, not disappointment in the upcoming months.
Cool. Let's see. Do we have any more questions? Or we're going to hit a frequently asked question. Let's see what we can do for that. Of course, can't get my screen share back to where I want it. But maybe I just need to do this. Ah, there we go. All right. You think I'd know how to use Zoom after all these months, right? All right. What if I don't have good credit? That's a good question. And it's very common. A lot of people start this process and something has happened to them in the past that has caused them to have less than perfect credit. First of all, I would say that you can buy a home, probably a lot of like the easiest thing to look at first is like, do you still qualify? Because people will think that their credit is too low to buy a home, and then they will find out that actually they can still buy a home. It's just the lending standards are strict, but they're not so strict that they make it so that you need to have an 800 credit score. So that's the first thing to do. If not, then you can improve your credit. Believe it or not, your credit is not set in stone. You can work on it over time. And actually, if you work with somebody like Jason Kilduff, he may help you figure out ways to improve your credit. Is that something that you do?
We absolutely do it all the time. Probably I just had 2 calls today, just trying to guide people in the right direction. There's little tweaks sometimes that you can make in your credit. We can actually go into software programs that we have, and I can actually change things on your credit in a hypothetical environment and tell you what that would do to your score. Mm-hmm. Or I could ask it to say, tell me what we need to do to increase the score by 40 points. And it will spit out a step-by-step procedure on what you need to do to get your score up there. And when you're buying a house, 20 points could save you thousands of dollars.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, it's like if you're, it's a type of debt that we sort of want people to take on, I guess is a good way to put it, for better or for worse. Home ownership is something that is very much encouraged, because it's good for the economy.
And it's good debt to have. There's tax benefits to it. It
Yep.
promotes home ownership.
And just because you had, even like I had a client once who, they had a bankruptcy like a number of years ago, and they built their way back up, and they were able to buy a home, right? So that's a thing that happens. If you have little hits on your credit, if you are committed to figuring out how to fix it, you will probably be able to figure that out 9 times out of 10. So I found that the biggest thing is just the person has to be committed to figuring it out, and it's going to take some time.
Absolutely. It's definitely a good place to start. Just get your credit pulled. I always say, rip the Band-Aid off. Let's get a starting point, an end game, right? And figure out the time frame for home ownership. We see it all different types of credit issues or no issues, but I'm always glad to help. And we're really committed to, if your goal is to buy a house, to help you get there.
Cool. All right. Let's see if we have any more.
So I'll actually add in too, on credit, it comes into play on the insurance side. We don't run your credit. It's a soft hit. It doesn't affect anything like that, but it's used towards an insurance score. And more carriers are using insurance scores for their rating characteristics. So if you are married and one spouse has a better credit rating than the other, generally what it does is it will pull the first person's name. So if it's Jason and Richard has a better insurance score, Richard would be the first named insured, and then Jason would be the next. So could be a fun conversation with your spouse, but that could save you some money on the insurance side.
Cool. All right. Let's do another one of the frequently asked questions. Let's see if we could do how much money do I need to put down? So that's a fun one, because, the rumor often is that you need to put 20% down. And then like the rumor on top of that is often that you should put 20% down. And both of those things are not necessarily true. You do not, if you're a first-time home buyer, there's a lot of options where you don't have to put 20% down. And even if you put less down, it can be a thing that is responsible to do for a number of reasons. That might, once again, be something that Jason could speak to just briefly there. There's programs that you could put 3.5% down, 5% down, and there's a couple where it's 100% financing.
Yeah, there's absolutely a lot of options out there, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's 100% financing. One of the best loan programs out there is VA, right, for veterans.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the benefits where and it's set up, it really takes care of the veterans. It's a great program, low barrier to entry, so 0% down. Incredible. There's also Department of Agriculture has a program, USDA, available in certain geographical areas, right? All throughout Connecticut, different towns have this program available. Again, 100% financing. There's FHA and even a conventional loan with 3% down. So really, from a standpoint of saving, you could technically, in some instances, get into a home with less money out of pocket than first, last, and security on an apartment. And it's not a bad thing that you're not putting a lot down. A lot of first-time home buyers are not putting much down.
Cool. So I like that question. It's always good to cover that. We do have a question from Jill over here, which is, where is the best area to live in Connecticut? That's going to depend on a lot of things, probably. Yeah, Connecticut has a lot of, the thing about Connecticut that you got to keep in mind is it's every single town is like its own brand. with the Miale team, we have ways to cover the whole entire state. We have agents that go everywhere here. But that's going to depend on what you're looking for. We have rural stuff, and we have very suburban areas with sidewalks and kids playing in the street or whatever. And we have just things where you will never even meet your neighbors. So yeah, that's a good question. What do you guys think? What's the best? How would you answer that question?
I mean, I'd say, I mean, like you say, Connecticut's unique. I mean, right before this meeting, I just sent something to Matt where Hartford Current said out of the whole country, we're in the top 3 of states people are moving to. I think we have North Dakota, Vermont ahead of us, or South Dakota and Vermont ahead of us. So that's pretty good for the whole state of Connecticut, you know, and like you said, I agree with you, Dave. It's what you want out of the town. And if you want rural, you got Litchfield, you got northwest corner, northeast corner. I mean, you want the shore, we've got the shore. So
yeah, where I live in West Hartford, I can, you know, I can ride my bike or walk to a Whole Foods in the downtown area and eat food, or like just I feel like I'm almost in a city, right?
exactly.
But at the same time, we have all that good stuff. We have a good little arts thing going on in the Hartford area, if that's something you're into. We have minor league sports teams. So it can feel like you're in an urban area, but the cool thing about it is if you are living in Connecticut, you can take off at 3 o'clock in the afternoon after you had a you know, almost full day of work and go golf or hike or something like that, do an outdoor activity, which you could not do if you were living in a real city. So you can feel like you're way off in the middle of nowhere as if you were somewhere further off, like in Vermont or New Hampshire or something, but you're actually pretty close to lots of civilization, and you can feel like you're in a city and you have all the amenities that you might want if you lived in a place like Boston or New York. So Connecticut's great in that regard. So that's my take on it. Let's see if there's any more. I think this is supposed to be about an hour long to begin with anyways, right? Of course, well, if anyone has questions, we can do that, but cancel, let me see. Let's go back to our frequently asked questions and we can wrap this up here in a few minutes. How long does the whole process take? The whole process, here's the way we do it, all right? The process of looking for a home, once you get that pre-approval and you start working with me to find a home, that's kind of the wild card. That could take anywhere from 2 weeks to several months. Ideally not longer than that. But there's, you know, you're probably gonna have to make offers on a couple properties now. But once you get a property under contract, from the day that you have a signed contract to closing, Jason might cringe when I say this, but I'm aiming for 30 days. It often doesn't go as planned, but 45 days is pretty safe. But we aim for 30 days. It seems like like one time I had it happen even faster than that. So I'll set the expectation in that, you know, all of the dates on a real estate contract, hopefully I don't make Rich cringe with this one, are not set in stone unless they say, what is it? You know, time is of the essence, I believe is the statement, right? But otherwise, it's an understanding that we are aiming for these dates, but it is not like a drop dead date. It's so if it says that we're closing on Monday the 15th, it's no big deal if we close on the 17th or 18th. That's just how it goes. And of course, you're trying to coordinate all the different schedules, like we talked about the challenges of doing that before also. But you could potentially close in 30 days. So I always say, why not aim for it? Some people might say because then you have to write extensions, but just as long as you understand that that's going to be part of the process. The fastest I've ever had it go without a mortgage is 2 weeks. The fastest with a mortgage was 17 days. So that's a little longer than 2 weeks, which was not something I'd want to promise to everybody. So, so how do you get started? If you are interested in buying a home, probably the best way to do it would be to reach out to me You can call me on my cell phone, 860-798-5742. That is also my personal cell phone, so you can text me there. You can email me at dave@themialeteam.com. Or if you wanted, you could start with one of the other individuals on this call too, to get started. And we just take it from there. Maybe even Jason. That would be ideally your first stop here. So, Jason, how could they reach you? With this lovely contact
It
information.
is right there.
Yes.
Take a screenshot of that. There's all my contact information. That's my personal cell phone as well. You can text, you can email, you can call.
Cool. And of course, we have Rich Witt.
That's my information right there. That again is my personal cell phone. It's on my card. I do answer it 7 days a week, day or evenings, and always there, glad to help.
Cool. And Ryan Keating.
Exactly what they said. So yeah, 860-916-9485 is my cell, and we're on social media at Keating Agency. So
Excellent. So unless anyone else has anything to add, I guess we're good tonight. Everybody knows how to get in touch with us, and we'd love to help you buy a home. If you have any additional questions, reach out anytime. So I guess that'll do it for tonight.
thanks, Dave.
Dave.
All right, cool.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks everyone for coming.
Coming.